Today we are staying with something very close to everyday life. In this episode, we're looking at why saying no, changing course, or not stepping in starts to feel more possible once internal pressure reduces. For many people, saying no isn't difficult because they don't know what they want. It's difficult because of everything that sits around the decision, the anticipation of disappointment, the fear of letting someone down, the sense that saying no creates a problem that then has to be managed. When internal pressure is high, saying no rarely feels like a simple boundary. It feels like a disruption, something that will ripple outward and need explaining, justifying, or repairing. So people often say yes automatically, even when it costs them. What changes as internal pressure reduces is not confidence in saying no, but tolerance for what follows it. Earlier, we talked about how decisions become easier when they stop feeling like tests of character. The same thing applies here. Saying no becomes possible when it no longer feels like a judgment on who you are or how reliable you need to be. You might notice that shift in small ways at first. You delay responding instead of answering immediately. You ask for time rather than agreeing on the spot. You notice the urge to step in, but you don't act on it straight away. These moments can feel uncomfortable, not because you've done something wrong, but because you've interrupted a familiar pattern. When you've been the one who adapts, responds, or carries things for a long time, not doing so can feel very unfamiliar. Often, the discomfort comes less from the other person's reaction and more from your own expectations. The story about what will happen if you don't say yes, the assumption that things will fall apart or that you'll be seen differently. What many people discover gradually is that the fallout is often smaller than expected. Sometimes nothing happens at all. Sometimes someone else steps in. Sometimes that there's brief disappointment followed by adjustment. These experiences quietly challenge the belief that saying no creates damage that must be managed. Another thing that changes is how responsibility is interpreted. Instead of feeling responsible for outcomes, people begin feeling responsible for their own capacity. That's a subtle but important shift. Capacity isn't static, it changes with context, energy, and demand. When people start responding from current capacity rather than long standing expectation, decisions feel more grounded. You might recognize this when you notice that saying no doesn't require the same explanation it once did. You don't need to justify it extensively. A simple response, less sufficient, not because you're detached, but because you're clearer. Clarity reduces pressure. Over time, people often realize that saying no isn't about rejection, it's about accuracy, accurately responding to what you can offer right now. That accuracy tends to lead to more sustainable involvement rather than withdrawal. This also changes how yes is experienced. When no becomes available, yes becomes more meaningful. It's no longer automatic, it's chosen. That choice carries less resentment and more intention. Another quiet change is how people relate to other people's reactions. Discomfort in others is tolerated more easily, not ignored, but not immediately fixed. People become less responsible for smoothing every response. This doesn't mean relationships become careless. Often they become clearer. Expectations adjust, patterns shift, people learn what is actually needed rather than what has always been assumed. It's worth noting that this process is rarely linear. People may say no one day and struggle the next. That's not failure, it's adjustment. Long-standing patterns take time to loosen. What matters is that the option becomes visible. Saying no is no longer unthinkable, it becomes one possible response among others. As this develops, people often feel less trapped by their roles. They're still dependable, still caring, but not defined entirely by how much they carry. In the next episode, we'll continue by looking at what happens in relationships when expectations shift in this way, and how others begin responding when long standing patterns start to change.